Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios on a beautiful day here in New Orleans. Hot one, but a beautiful day here in New Orleans. And of course, a big day for the New Orleans Saints, big day for sports as we look back at what's going on with the college game, baseball. We'll talk about the Pels season. Also, we'll talk about the Saints schedule release. We'll talk about as they get ready to go to rookie minicamp this weekend. We'll look back at the draft and to break it down for us, one of the best we have in the city. I mean, when I say the guy has knowledge, the guy has knowledge. Of course, he's the voice of UNO Athletics. He has his own show, All Access, on 106.1 FM, and also part of CrestCitySports.com. And I've said this before, if you're not reading CrestCitySports.com on a daily basis, you're not keeping up with sports here in the city. There was a time when, again, you had multiple ways to be able to catch it in terms of, again, newspapers, etc. Everything now going more digital. CrestCitySports.com with, again, some of the best writers we've ever had in this town. Again, bringing you great news every single day when it comes to, again, prep sports, professional sports, collegiate sports. They're all over it. Jude Young joins us on the program today. Jude, how are you?
I'm great, especially after that introduction.
Well, that's the truth, Jude. It's one of my favorites. When I'm not sure of something, I'll pop it on there, and of course, I know there's a story. Like, again, for instance, the track star, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on, from UNO, who ran the 994. I couldn't find it anywhere. I go to CrestCitySports.com, there's a write-up. Right. So I knew that. I said, why don't I go there first? Because that's the kind of stuff you're going to get. But welcome to the show. Before we get started, tell everybody what you guys are involved in.
Well, you really regurgitated some of what I was going to say, but I do want to point out that everything we do at Crescent City Sports is free. All of our content, video, including today as we record this and do this live, is the Division I high school state semifinals, and we were fortunate enough to work with the LHSA and broadcast both of those live and free through our site and on YouTube, and also simulcast on Nash Icon 106.1 FM. So if you're watching the show on a Thursday, right after it, there's a semifinal coming. 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock start times. 3 local Catholic League schools involved out of the 4 in those games. Of course, we're covering everything from the Pelicans offseason, very interesting draft lottery next week, the New Orleans Saints, the schedule coming out and analyzing that, and the final steps they may be taking to shore up their roster for the offseason. You talked about college baseball, that about to really heat up for a lot of Louisiana schools who have postseason hopes as far as the NCAA tournament goes. You name it, we're covering it. And of course, on All Access Tuesdays on Nash Icon, my normal night to come at you during the summer to get you ready for the fall when football season heats up again. It never ends.
No doubt. let's open up with the schedule. It's been leaked. There's been leaks earlier this week, which were found to be, again, phony, fake leaks. But the leak happened this morning. And I know Will's going to put that up on the screen for you guys as well. Week 1 at Atlanta. That is a noon kickoff here in New Orleans. Week 2, Buccaneers at home. Week 3 at the Panthers. Week 4, they travel to London to take on the Vikings. Your thoughts on the first quarter of the season?
It's interesting that it's heavily loaded with the division early in the season versus not as many division games. Usually expect to see 3 out of 4 late when we look at that part in a little while. I knew because of the timing of the London game you weren't going to get a bye before or after because the byes don't start until week 6. But again, early in the season you get those divisional games, you see how you measure up. It gives you a better idea of just how good you are and how you need to approach things moving forward. This is an aggressive front office. This is an aggressive organization. They believe they're Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. So that tells them if there are issues we need to fill, there's time before the trade deadline and plenty of it. But again, the London game, I know losing a home game isn't that attractive and having it at 8:30 in the morning local time isn't great, but we knew that going into today. And again, you've got to pay your lumps in the NFL. Everybody's got to do it sometime.
Interesting, starting up at Atlanta, Dennis Allen, again, an Atlanta native, a guy that, again, his dad played for the Atlanta Falcons. Interesting, again, the Dennis Allen era would start in Atlanta, right? The Buccaneers have not beaten the Saints, is it 3 regular seasons? Or is it 2?
4 in a row against Tom Brady in the regular season.
Right, in the regular season. So again, that is going to be circled, I'm sure, by Tom Brady and the Buccaneers when you start talking about that. Panthers, again, they caught the Saints in a COVID game last year. But as you mentioned, if you could get out the gate and winning your 3 division games, you got a leg up for the rest of the season.
And who knows if you're making out right against divisional foes very early in the slate, because Marcus Mariota is almost certainly going to start that Falcons game, but you've got somebody in the wings, a rookie that was drafted, and the same goes for the Panthers. By week 3, we might not see Sam Darnold. So will you see those young options take those snaps? I don't know. Desmond Ridder, I think he's a project. He'll take time. It wouldn't shock me at all if you saw Matt Corral week 3 against Carolina. So who knows there, because that's going to determine how competitive those teams are going to be this season.
Saints have done well in international games. Now, again, a lot of this under Sean Payton. Your thoughts of going to London and taking on the Vikings?
Vikings game, I guess it's a good pick out of the bunch because we've had so many games against the Vikings recently. Not too long ago, a playoff game at home. You lose a little bit of that advantage in a matchup that's been a rivalry, but I think some of the heat has come out of that recipe a little bit in recent years because of the directions of the two teams. But they're going to be one of the more interesting teams in the NFC to watch because they do have stability at quarterback. They've got some weapons on offense, but their defense has struggled. Now it's a new coach. Will they be able to improve on that side of the ball? Second
quarter of the season starts with the Seahawks at home, the Bengals, the Cardinals, and the Raiders. A lot of people, again, surprised that the Bengals game is not on national television. Joe Burrow, I was surprised they didn't send that one to London.
Right.
I thought that was going to be the London game. But they didn't. So Seahawks, Bengals, Cardinals, Raiders, your thoughts?
I think it would have been better off for the Saints, if not for local LSU fans, that game would have gone to London. I think that would have been a better atmosphere because there are going to be a lot of orange and black, not black and gold, orange and black in that stadium for that noon kickoff. You're
talking about Saints fans that are going to be LSU fans that will be pulling for Joe Burrow.
Absolutely, no question about it. That's going to be a big chunk of the crowd. So that hurts a little bit, but not being prime time, probably a little better for the atmosphere there. But you look at that bunch in general, the last two probably as tough as the Bengals because we know the Seahawks are starting over. So that's a game you got to win at home if you're really going to be a contender in the division and beyond. But the Cardinals on a Thursday night makes that more difficult.
First nationally televised game, right?
First nationally televised game for the Saints. You get your Thursday nighter out of the way. Unfortunately, you play the Arizona Cardinals in the first half of the season when they tend to be better under Cliff Kingsbury than they are in the second half, so that makes that tough. And the Raiders, they went all in this offseason. That's going to be a very difficult contest. So looking through the schedule, it's why it's one of the hardest rated in the league, but you've got to make some hay when you have 3 out of the 4 in that stretch at home.
Right. November starts with the Ravens. That is here in New Orleans. That is a Monday night football game at the Steelers, Rams, and then the 49ers in the third quarter of the season.
Interesting that Baltimore is the only home primetime game this season.
Yes.
Usually the Saints have 3, sometimes in the Halcyon days 4 of those, so you only get the 1. We know how good the Ravens are. We know what the Steelers are going to be looking at, probably by then going with the rookie quarterback, their first-round pick. So hard to anticipate there, but these teams are built on defense and the running games. That's always a tough challenge. The Rams, the atmosphere there, why that isn't in prime time, I don't know. And you get a featured afternoon game against the 49ers, another team that could be in flux at quarterback. I think the quarterback story around the league is going to tell the tale. With so many teams, it's hard to anticipate just how tough the matchups are going to be when you face them. But I do think that that goes back to why the Saints were quick on their plan B after Deshaun Watson. We're going to go with Jameis Winston, a quantity we know after half a season as a starter, because that's going to give you an edge in a lot of these games, and particularly in the first half of the schedule. 2 games on the road in that third quarter, 2 games at home. Again, it is November. You'll be in Pittsburgh in November. There's a possibility of again a bad weather game. We'll see how that kind of plays out going forward. Then again, the fourth quarter of the season at the Buccaneers to start that. That's a Monday Night Football game. Finally, the Saints get a bye in Week 14 in December the 11th, and then again it is the Falcons at the Browns, at the Eagles, and then of course in the 18th game of the season it'll be the Panthers at home. You know, you would say that a dome team, you're not doing them many favors, giving them those tough outdoor games late in the season. Browns, Eagles, back-to-back in December. That's awfully tough on paper. But this is a Saints team that's built upon its defense now. So that's when you have to believe in them. And you better be sure that that offensive line that you're still questioning, is it going to be solid enough so that you can control games with the running game? It's a different Saints team, but hearkening back to some in the past, maybe Jim Moore era, if Jameis Winston is too turnover prone early in the year, he may not lose his job even though Andy Dalton's around, but this team may get more conservative like they were under Sean Payton with Winston last year. I agree. Vegas has the Saints 7.5 wins in the season. I think it's low. It is low. I think it's very low. I think again, if you're a bettor, you run to your app right now and you take that over all day long. Looking at the way the schedule sets up, how do you think that kind of affects that quote-unquote 7.5? I just think that the overall quality of the schedule does make it difficult to maybe have those visions of a really high ceiling with your record. I think the first 3 games are going to tell you everything. You need to be 2-1 or 3-0 against divisional foes there, and if you can do that with 2 of the 3 on the road, that does set you up to start thinking about what you're probably going to need to be able to win the NFC South, which is 12 games. That's the area where you've got to get to even think you have an opportunity to get to 12-5. But after that, in general, this team couldn't have been more unlucky when it came to injuries and the big COVID breakout that cost them any chance to win a home game late in the season against Miami, and they still went 9-8. I don't think there's any reason to think this team can't get the double-digit wins because they look so strong on the defensive side of the ball, and they can't help but improve in the passing game. Assuming Michael Thomas comes back and Chris Olave, that's going to the penthouse from the outhouse where they were at that position last year. Interesting again. Early, you have division games. Late, you have division games. When you look at the last games of the season, Bucks, bye, Falcons, then the Browns and Eagles, which again, they both are on the road. You mentioned cold weather games, and then you finish up against the Panthers. The other part of this is the Alvin Kamara factor. At what point, if at all, does the NFL suspend him for the off-the-field situation in Las Vegas when he got into the fight? Is that going to be something they'll be able to continue to push down the road? I mean, again, some legal analysts believe that, again, that with August there'll be another continuance. That'll put it maybe into December. At that point, again, maybe they'll continue this again until after the season. Also, there's a possibility of maybe pleading this down to a misdemeanor because he's never been in trouble before. And, of course, then the civil suit that'll follow no matter what that he'll have to deal with. The problem is, again, for Alvin Kamara, the NFL has the tape. They know what they've seen. We don't know what they've seen. And are they going to look and say, okay, we've seen enough? It doesn't matter what the federal, again, local authorities do. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the civil courts. In the court of the NFL, this is your punishment. I think because of the collective bargaining agreement and how the union works with the league office on these matters to try to make it as fair as possible, the end result. You talked about a continuance on the criminal side of things, likely to late in the season, and that still pushes off the civil matter. I don't think we're going to get a ruling on Kamara until affecting the 2023 season, and I'm pretty sure the Saints are operating on that assumption.
Let's hope so, because again, that would be, you're talking about down the stretch, right? And again, it happened with Deontay Hardy last year. Again, the worst thing can happen is when you're trying to make a stretch run, to have the NFL putting these suspensions out there because they finally went through the appeal process, and then it comes late.
Right.
So I'm hoping that you're right, that this gets pushed off and maybe into the next season if possible, depending on how this goes.
But again, this is a more complicated case than Hardy, than Lattimore as well, because and you're talking about deals that don't have a civil component, which really does add to if it's a misdemeanor in the end, pleaded down, for example, then based on how the civil case goes, could add to the overall decision for a punishment from the league office. So many components there. Pretty safe assumption at this point it gets pushed to next season.
I like this team. I like the way this team is built right now. I think they still need another veteran wide receiver. I think they have to get another veteran running back at this point because they did not draft one. Abram Smith is a possibility, the kid from Baylor. We'll see what happens with the minicamp this weekend, if he can translate what he did at Baylor to again, the pros. But I like the way this is built. And you mentioned the defense. With Tyrann Mathieu now being added to the mix along with Marcus May at the safety position, I look at this depth chart now and I see a really strong team on all three levels. Now, a lot of it has to do with, again, Cam Jordan coming back and being the player that he was toward the end of last year. Peyton Turner maybe breaking out. And, of course, Marcus Davenport's got to have a really good season for this team. But I like him on all three levels.
Yeah, I do, too. I think the big area of risk is linebacker if you don't bring Quan Alexander back, and that's still floating out there. Otherwise, pretty strong, real depth on all three levels. You have the depth on the D-line, you have the depth in the secondary. That goes a long way to get you through a season so that you can live up to your capabilities. You talked about the veteran running back. I think with Sony Michel signing with Miami, I essentially believe that if the Saints really believed in him as what was thought the best veteran running back still on the open market, they would have been more aggressive and won that battle because Miami has more younger backs competing for the snaps there. They added Chase Edmonds, for example, in the offseason, who's pretty good. So if they didn't really believe in him, this might be a situation where at that particular need, and I do believe it is a need, they want to see Mark Ingram in training camp, and it might be something where we see a trade during camp, or they'll try to survive like the Ravens did, who were able to pick up a Latavius Murray and a couple of other veterans, another in Devontae Freeman, who was here, who didn't work out, and those guys were instrumental in winning some games for a team that's run heavy. So I think the Saints believe they can wait on that either by trade or cuts during camp. Because looking what's available now, do you really upgrade from what Ingram brought you last year? Probably
absolutely not. But I would agree with you. That's probably the way they're going to go. They're going to see again because we know veterans going to get cut.
But receiver. Again, we know that you're thinking about bringing another LSU guy back in.
How do you feel about that? Look, I talk about this all the time. Because I think we get caught up, right? LSU. Okay, Tulane went low with the local guy. And it's a great story. To me, I could care less if he went to Columbia University.
Agreed.
I just think he's a really good fit for this team right now. And one of the reasons why is, again, we don't know what Michael Thomas is going to be when he comes back.
That's the biggest component because Jarvis Landry could start for you and have Olave as the complement and be his best version of himself. He's an excellent blocker. He's tough in traffic. He flat out makes plays under duress. Heavy contact. He's going to come down with the football. Yeah, he's not going to stretch the field for you, but he'll move the chains. And if you don't have Thomas, you need that. If you do have Thomas and he's your third guy and it's 3rd and 6, Jarvis Landry's going to get open.
He's going to single coverage.
Even if he's not open, you can throw it his way, and there's a better chance of him making the play than the other guy. If you have that kind of component that helps you continue to put drives together that you don't have for sure right now, and you can get it for the right price, why not?
And when I look at the free agent wide receivers out there right now, there aren't a lot of guys that give you what he gives you. You went blocking, a guy that can catch the ball in space, those tight windows, a guy that, again, I know the quarterback will have a lot of faith in. Well, he didn't have faith last year in throwing to, again, the lot of big lot receivers that they tried to sell us, right?
And he even brings in a component as a gadget guy because he's one of the best receivers that have ever played the game at throwing the football.
That's right.
He's made huge plays for Cleveland in particular during his time there. He's a proven element. If you're trying to win right now, it makes a whole lot of sense. spent. They only spent, as far as this year's cap goes on the Tyrann Mathieu deal, $3 to $4 million this salary in that range when they had near 20 to spend. So they've got enough money that they can open up, work the right kind of multi-year deal if he'll take it. But even if he doesn't, and you don't find any other elements out there worth spending the money on, give him the one-year deal, throw some incentives his way, which his agent might find attractive because of the Michael Thomas question mark. And I think that might be a good deal for both sides.
And look, to me, I look, in the past, it looked like they shied away from local players. It doesn't seem that way this time around. Case in point, Tyrann Mathieu signed a very, very cap-friendly hometown discount for this team, and a lot of people didn't believe he was going to drop down and make less money than he did last year. But he's doing it. He's doing it.
And I think it's in part not just because of coming home, which I believe he truly had some question marks about at the same time, because maybe you're better off without the bad people being right at your back door, so to speak, and easier to control out of town, because when you're a star athlete, the people in your background, both good and bad, probably want to benefit from you in some way. Again, just speculating, but the Saints were a team that he considered in the end to be a contender, that he believed, hey, this is a playoff team, to the point where I think he was being honest when he left after his visit before the draft, when he said, I don't know if they need me. That's a compliment to how good he looked at the defense and thought it was. But clearly there was a hole at safety that wasn't filled during the draft, and they did need him. And he decided this is a place where I can win. Because at this point in his career, I know he already has a ring. He had to make that decision because he wasn't going to get the money on the highest level like a Marcus Williams, because he's not that young. He's a few years older, and that makes a big difference in front offices when they make those decisions.
Yep, I'm with you. And then you look at, again, the interchangeability of May and also Tyrann Mathieu. Now you have the ability to be able to disguise that defense even more. He doesn't maybe have the range that Marcus Williams has, but again, he's a guy that is a playmaker. He's around the ball, and he's a great tackler as well.
I found it interesting that Dennis Allen referred to May in one of the draft press conferences as more of a strong safety. When the numbers tell you he had his most success as a free safety. And a lot of the NFL is going to the too high safety look. That seems to be the trend. These two guys give you those interchangeable parts where formations can shift pre-snap, and those guys can shift into different roles on the fly, and you don't lose anything. You may not have that true top-end center fielder, because Marcus Williams is up there with the top 2 or 3 in the league as far as a single high safety. But that doesn't mean there aren't different ways to do it. And Dennis Allen's probably been thinking of the next evolution of his defense. You want to be a little bit more variable over time, no matter how good you've been, because eventually teams find weaknesses and learn to adjust to you. You're always trying to give them different looks, just like offenses are to your defense.
You mentioned Quan Alexander earlier, and again, I'd like to see him back as well. Look, Pete Werner may be a breakout player this year, but at the very least, we know that, again, the game is a game of attrition when it talks about the NFL. You need quality players at every single level of your team. He gives you a guy that, first of all, him and Demario Davis play so well together. Okay? That's the first part of this. And the second part of it is, even if you're playing Werner a little bit more, you have an opportunity to have a guy, again, that he could stay fresh for the back end of the season then. I'm hoping they're able to get that together, because he's been a very, very productive player for the Saints since he's been here.
And it goes back to, you're trying to win right now. You don't have a true fill-in guy who's starter caliber behind your 2 linebackers that are going to be on the field all the time. So whether it's Werner or Demario Davis at this point in his career, one of those guys get hurt, you're taking a real step down based on what they have right now. At least in experience, even if you've got some talent that you like the 5th round pick, no guarantee he's going to be ready to fill in any significant way. So why not shore up that last spot?
And look, Demario Jackson, they say he's a Demario Davis clone. DeMarco Jackson, pardon me. Maybe he is, but he's not going to be ready to this year, okay? He's going to have, that's a practice squad guy for right now. The same thing with Jordan Jackson, who was, again, the kid out of Air Force in the 6th round. They say he's a great passer inside. Look, I'd love to see him be able to come in and compete immediately. But more than likely, he's a guy that's going to have a year of seasoning. With that said, talk about Trevor Penning as we go to the offensive side of the ball. They have a great insurance policy in James Hurst. They don't have to force this kid out there. But, look, we know You're picked at 19 in the first round. You got to be plug and play.
Right.
The question is, coming from where he is, again, from the school he came from, playing against the competition, how will, we know he's a good run blocker, how is he going to fit in terms of immediately when it comes to pass blocking and protecting Jameis Winston?
I think the most important thing about him is all of the physical attributes are there for him to be perfect.
Athleticism.
Long arms, you know, he's got the length you look for, but the problem is because he was playing at a small school that was a run-heavy team, didn't have great quarterback play, what did they do? They just mauled people. So he was able to get away with bad habits, poor hand placement, swinging his foot out on the outside a little early and giving himself away that on the NFL level can hurt you. And he was already making some progress with coaching at the Senior Bowl that I'm sure the Saints wanted to see. It was good that he was getting beat sometimes because of those bad habits, because then they could see in a very short amount of time how he was adjusting. He's too talented not to at least be a decent pass blocker, okay, for his career. Like, the floor should be dominant run blocker, decent pass blocker. The ceiling could be all pro. I think they can bring him along pretty quickly, but you're right, because of Hurst, they don't have to rush it. They can almost pretend like what we've seen with Teron Armstead over the years. He's going to miss some games, right? Well, Penning may miss them because of not being ready yet, but by mid-season it would be a surprise if they haven't thrown him out there. And in part because I think they really do want to run the ball, and he's got the ability to be dominant. He was the first player that PFF said ever graded out 99.9% on run blocking for his career. That is ridiculous on any level, and he's a mauler there, and that can give the Saints a component that I think is really going to fit their new head coach.
And if he doesn't start immediately, he becomes the tackle eligible. Will Clapp is now gone. He's with the Los Angeles Chargers. There's an opening for that there if they want to utilize him there. Chris Olave looks like a plug-and-play player, like he's going to come in and immediately, again, be the deep threat. But people underestimate his ability to run routes. Again, when you look at the scouting report on him, one of the things that they talked about was when the receivers that were coming out this year, he was probably the best route runner of the group. With that said, they did give up 5 picks to get him. Talk about the cost, talk about in terms of him this year.
Well, let's get to the cost, because you're talking about giving up second-day picks and an early third-day pick in order to maneuver to get the receiver you needed to get. But you also have to take in the financial component, because big-time receivers were going for over Michael Thomas's current contract. You thought you were paying him a lot at $20 million. Guys like A.J. Brown getting $25 now, because you have to have difference makers at receiver now. And the Saints, with their salary cap situation, because good or bad moving forward, they're married to Thomas for at least a couple more years. They had to find a cheaper option to add to their starting lineup, and that was the way to do it. Cheaper, not on draft capital side, but in the salary side. And as far as the player, so I'm defending it to a certain extent, even though I get where people are saying, unnamed sources around the league are saying the Saints don't value their draft capital well enough. But at the same time, I'll get to that point where I understand why they feel that way based on their success in the past in a minute. But as a receiver, the thing about Olave is that he is plug and play, and he's the closest thing to Brandon Cooks coming out that you know is going to be a starting wide receiver. Is he going to be a #1 superstar? Maybe not, but is he going to be a guy who's a tough cover that is going to be hard for teams to justify single covering because he can make the big play? He's so much like Cooks, even with his weaknesses, because of the way he's built, although a little bigger. He's not a great open field guy. The Saints thought they got a guy when they drafted Cooks that they could throw hitches and wide receiver screens to, and he'd make plays in space. That's not who he is. He is a true wide receiver route runner, sharp cuts, gets open, has the deep speed. So the Saints have guys around from that era, of course, starting with Pete Carmichael, who know how to use him. And it's exactly what they were missing, that component who's going to step right in, and you don't have to teach him a lot to be successful about what they're going to ask him to do. That's why it made sense, even though they may look back and say Jameson Williams winds up being the more dynamic guy. He's hurt, and he's not as polished at what the Saints needed, and they're trying to win right now. Say what you like about winning right now. When you're talking about using high draft picks, Pelicans are going to be a big story as far as what they do with their lottery pick coming up. But the Saints are looking to win right now, and they did something that they could afford to do with their salary cap issues.
Alontae Taylor, second round. a lot of people had him as a 4th-round pick, 3rd-round pick. He went in the top 50. They love his measurables, and look, I love his measurables.
Yeah.
The only question I have is, again, the value of the pick. But from that standpoint, he's going to get every opportunity to make it on special teams, and it gives them another player that they're grooming in that secondary.
The only value of a pick that matters is the Saints board in their draft room.
Right.
They might have had him higher than most of, if not all, the teams in the league. But keep this in mind, when you're reading all this draft prep information and hearing these analysts and experts who aren't working for NFL teams. They are telling you one thing from their connections. Most years there's anywhere from 15 to 25 true first-round grade guys. And this past draft, after that drop-off, that was no more than 20 according to most. You had such a glut that it really went all the way through the top 100 picks as to where a guy's valued based on how he fits in on a team and what the vision is. Taylor's an extremely good athlete, and I love the fact that even though Dennis Allen says he's a corner, their vision is clearly for him to be at least the 3rd corner, I think, year 2 of his career when they move on from Bradley Roby. That's what I think they're planning to do. The fact that his floor, because he's such a good tackler, he's going to be so good on special teams right away, is that he could wind up being a starting safety for you eventually for a long time. Like how Malcolm Jenkins worked out in the league. They thought he was going to be a corner. They quickly saw, okay, so the worst end of the scouting report is there, and he winds up being a great safety for a long time. I think Taylor's going to be that guy because making plays, being physical and using his athleticism on that side of the game versus using the speed and the length and being able to cover receivers downfield, he's more advanced in that area already.
Former quarterback, former wide receiver, and a guy that played 4 years of cornerback at Tennessee. All right, rookie minicamp this weekend. There are some undrafted free agents that the Saints went out and gave bonuses to get those guys. Abram Smith is one of those guys. Rashid Shaheed out of Weber State is another one. Deshaun Dixon, a guy you know a little bit about from Nichols, is a guy that's a wide receiver. Lewis Kroll out of Pittsburgh, tight end. Also, again, Smoke Monday was given a bonus, as well as Lewis Kidd, the offensive lineman out of Montana State. Your thoughts on some of these undrafted free agents?
I think the best thing to mention when we talk about value of your actual draft picks, especially day 3, comes up here when we look at these UDFAs. Would anybody have flinched if the Saints would have taken Abram Smith, Smoke Monday with their 5th-round pick?
No way.
So how valuable really are those late-day picks? Because it's a crapshoot at that point anyway, and the Saints have found so many values in undrafted free agency, especially when you look at Monday as a versatile safety. You're going to ask to come in and be a special teamer, and if that's all he is in your 4th safety, maybe he allows you to move on from JT Gray a year early than a year late, and he can be better in playing snaps because he's a better overall safety than him. Those are the type of moves you look at. Undrafted free agents, just like on CrescentCitySports.com on the front page. Right now, Renee Nato asked the question, can Abram Smith be the next Pierre Thomas? Who's to say he can't? And if you're getting that kind of value in an undrafted guy, it tells you just how deep the talent pool is in a given year coming out and how late-round draft picks probably don't mean as much. Smith has a great chance to make the team because he played 1 season at linebacker before just 1 year as a starter this past year. 1,600 yards rushing, really good in 1 year as a starter in the Big 12. But the year before, starting 4 games at the end of the season at linebacker and averaging 11 tackles per game at a position you're not. Great athlete, and the fact is he fits the 3rd running back profile, even if he's not going to beat out 2 veterans ahead of him, and he makes you a better overall football team. Love picks like that. Special teams again comes up, and Rashid Shaheed. I think that guy, once you look at his profile and his highlights, he could be somebody who winds up being better than Deontay Hardy. Especially as a receiver and somebody you put out there to stretch the field. His production at a higher level than Hardy, he's a bigger player than Hardy. He's just as good, if not better, as an open field guy. And those are the guys you can get on the street. The Saints have proven it time and time again. That group's going to be fun to watch that you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. What about Dixon from Nichols State? Everybody's asking about him.
He's a really polished receiver. He's not a guy who's going to stretch the field, so he's more possession receiver guy. He did so in college, yes, but looking at how he profiles to the next level. But there's no reason to think that he can at least meet the practice squad requirement for this team.
I agree.
I look at him as somebody who's got more overall talent than a little Jordan Humphrey who stuck around for a while. And Nichols ran the ball a lot too, especially this past year because the quarterback play as far as passing game wasn't as good. This guy's big and physical, 6'2", 6'3", likes to block.
Yep, no doubt. Plethora of information from Jude Young today here on Inside New Orleans Sports. All right, we break a little bit later than normal. We come back, we'll talk some Pels, we'll touch on the Breakers, we'll jump into some college baseball. We have time, we'll talk about spring football, both LSU and Tulane. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM is our guest. I'm Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM is our guest. Catch his show every Tuesday night following my show, All Access, on again, 106.1 FM. All right, let's get to the Pels. Great season, considering again how they started, 1-12, 3-16. Lost to the Suns 3-2 in the first round of the playoffs. They made great strides throughout the season. They look like a team that can be a real contender for next year. Big question, obviously, is again what's going to happen with Zion Williamson going forward. They have the 8th pick in the draft right now, a 26% chance of moving up into the top 4, 6% chance of moving into the top spot. Let's first of all, why don't you give me your synopsis on the season that was?
Season that was couldn't have started worse and couldn't have ended better based on the start. You play without your superstar the whole year. You survive a 3-16 start, and Willie Green shows you made the right decision as a coach, short-term, long-term, and your future's so bright. And it all happened because, look, a lot of things happened. We know C.J. McCollum trade is big. But it really came down to the idea that you were able to get 3 rookies to step in and prove that they are part of your rotation moving forward. To prove it, you don't have any questions. It's now just a matter of how much better those guys are going to get. Alvarado being that perfect second unit sort of guard off the bench who can bring you that playmaking, a team that needs to get better defensively, he brings it. Herb Jones, his defense speaks for itself. At this point, he's an unquestioned starter. It's hard to see anything happen in the offseason to change that. And, having Murphy develop slowly wound up working for the best because it got Jones the experience early, and Murphy learned what he needed to do and showed that he could respond to coaching and demands and going back and forth between the team and the G League. And he brings the shooting you want. Apparently, he posted that he's now 6'9".
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So he's got the length that you want as a 3-and-D wing who could develop his game to get even better. And you have that all filling around Brandon Ingram finding himself even more as a pro, even though he'd already been an all-star. Best season yet, still in his mid-20s. It all fits together with McCollum's leadership setting the tone. The best part of it is not just what happened during the season. You talk about getting Williamson back. Top 8, 9, maybe top 4 pick.
Right.
Pelicans don't have to do anything else but make that draft pick. If they don't want to, make that pick, get Zion back, go into the season, and believe they're at least a playoff team in the Western Conference and maybe a whole lot more. If you'd have told us 12 months ago they'd be in this position, nobody would have believed it.
No, I would agree. All right, let's talk about, first of all, about Zion. He said he couldn't he couldn't sign the extension fast enough. But yet, Griff says that he wants Zion to concentrate on getting healthy, but the extension is going to be a challenge. Look, I'm just looking at it from a business standpoint. I'm putting protections in for the club. He missed 118 games. He's played 85 in his career. For most of it, it's been tumultuous. Doesn't want to be here, this and that. Look, he sees a good thing now here.
Sure.
Okay? But again, if I'm the club, I'm protecting myself. The question is, will he sign something like that?
I think he's going to have to give in and sign something along the lines of the deal you just mentioned that Joel Embiid had to agree to.
Exactly.
Now, the thing is, it's probably going to work out even on that level that Embiid did, because there were real question marks about whether he could stay healthy, and it had nothing to do with how he was taking care of himself.
Right.
And Zion's a different story. I don't know if I trust his maturity, and I know David Griffin and the front office don't. At the same time, when you have a legitimate superstar, game changer, a guy that when he's on the court and healthy is competing to be all NBA first team.
Right.
You've got to roll the dice to some extent with him. But sure, there's got to be a negotiation there, and something where in the end, because your roster is so good and you can believe you can be good for a long time, that you have a way to escape if you need to in maybe 2-3 years, is something they should be working for.
How's the fit? How's the fit with Zion coming back?
I think it's fine because I trust Green. I think he's going to be able to get the most out of him. A lot have speculated, and I agree with this, that in order not to take the ball out of Brandon Ingram's hands too much and make him an unhappy player, perhaps to get what you need throughout the first 3 quarters of the game, it's pretty easy to stagger both of them so that Zion, for example, you should be a great second quarter team, because I would think Zion plays early and is the first of the true stars in the lineup to come out, and he comes back in late first quarter and leads the second unit, whereas they're staggered enough that who's hot last 5 minutes of the game when the game is on the line? That guy's going to get the ball more. Where's the matchup against the team you're facing defensively? That's the problem you want to have, and I think they'll be able to coexist, get their numbers, and get in their rhythm, because I trust Willie Green to make the right decisions there.
It's unfair for me to ask you what they get with their pick, because again, it could be 8th, it could be 9th, it could be a top 4, and there's a difference in the players that are available during that time. But let's just say this is a very good draft, top 10.
Sure, it is. So they're going to get somebody that can help them in some respect. If they draw a top 4 pick, the chances go way up that they can wind up getting a really special guy.
Right.
And that makes the decision even harder at that point, because you've got to rank these players, and you can't draft based on nice, safe fit.
Right.
You got to say, who do I think is going to be the best player, the best asset moving forward, when this is a luxury pick based on how the rest of your team is already built. Sure, you could look at it and you draw a top, let's say you draw the number 2 overall pick. You could look at it where you're deciding, you know, Jabari Smith Jr. is a better fit for us right now because he helps space the floor at 6'10" and looks more versatile defensively. But Paolo Banchero might be the better player.
Right.
And even though he doesn't fit as well because he's going to need the ball at the power forward position like Zion, should we pass him up if we really have him graded significantly higher than Smith or the next option?
True.
Those are going to be the type of tough decisions they're going to have either there or even still, say, if they're number 8 or number 9. Maybe you like this wing, a 3-and-D wing, whether it's Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona, A.J. Griffin from Duke. But say you think Dyson Daniels out of the G League, who's more of a point guard type, who you know, if he improves his shooting just a little bit defensively and running a team and making things happen, he has a little bit of that Chris Paul in him. He has a little bit of that Jason Kidd. Maybe you think you got to take him, even though you've already got 3 point guards on your roster, counting McCollum with the 2 young guys, including Lewis coming back from the ACL. So that makes it tough. Do you go and take the best guy, even though he might not be the best fit? I think they should do that, but it'll be really interesting no matter where they pick, what the decision-making process winds up being and what they say after the draft, after they pull the trigger.
Larry Nance in the last year of his deal, do you extend him?
Yes, absolutely. He was more than a throw-in. He's somebody that helps you match up with the 4 and the 5. He brings toughness. He doesn't need the ball. He can defend and he can rebound. And because I don't think Jackson Hayes is too much longer for this team.
That was my next question.
Yeah. It's a perfect fit to keep him around, and he needs some veterans who have been there through the league, not just a McCollum. Having a few guys in their early 30s for the next 2 or 3 years, that brings that locker room stability that these other young stars are going to need.
So you're willing to give up on Jackson Hayes?
I am, yes, because I don't. At this point, his maturity is an even bigger question without the upside of Zion Williamson. And when you take a guy, and that's another factor here to this lottery pick that happens to be slotted right now at 8, which is where he was picked, number 8 overall. Once those guys get to to the next contract. If they're not earning big money, they don't stay on those teams.
Right.
And Jackson Hayes hasn't earned the type of money to be making well over $20 million a year. So that's an investment. He's going to get overpaid based on who he is and what he's produced, and maybe even his upside. Somebody else needs to do that, not the Pelicans.
Snell's in the last year of his deal. They have his bird rights. I think they move on from him.
Sure.
Is there a buyout with Garrett Temple? Does he move into the front office or get on the coaching staff, or do they buy him out and let him go ahead and try to find another team?
I think because unless they see a deal they can't refuse, they're not going to be aggressive trading for another piece. That keeping his salary, what is it, around the $5 million range, as part of a package that could lead to the next C.J. McCollum-like deal come the trade deadline. I think that's probably the route they're going to take. Just like I don't believe that they're jumping off of Devontae Graham
That
too
was my
soon.
next question.
Because you pair those salaries together, and then you go ahead and
So you're
add
looking
somebody
toward
else.
the trade deadline to utilize those guys to move on and maybe bring another piece in.
And get another piece in where you can take back up to 125% of the salary you're sending out. It could be that six-man, that backcourt player that you don't get right now that can help you win in the playoffs.
How good can this team be next year? Bringing Zion back, getting a lottery pick, Willie Green his second year.
Top of the West competitor. If everything goes right, who's to say they can't win 60 games? I know it.
I'm
but
with
it's
you.
time to go there.
Right.
I don't think people should accept the concept of, well, they're going to take the next step and they can be top four. That's a bunch of nonsense.
Look at
You either
Memphis.
have it or you don't. When you're ready, you're ready. And this team could easily be ready next year, and that should be their goal. They should be thinking, we should be the #1 seed this year, because they look a whole lot better as a team that got in as the 9 seed against the #1 seed than the team in the next round who has a superstar in Luka Doncic talking about Dallas has looked against Phoenix. There's a reason for that. And again, that's without Zion.
Right. No doubt about it. I'm with you. Good things ahead for the New Orleans Pelicans. All right. Quickly, I want to talk about the USFL and the Breakers. They're now 3-1. They beat the Houston Gamblers 23-10, 10 points in the final 2 minutes. Fedora seems like he's a pretty good coach. The front office looks like they're putting together a pretty good team. They got the Generals on tap on Saturday. Talk about your thoughts about this team thus far.
I've watched enough of it to know that based on the weird stagger they had in the draft for position, that they've done pretty well with Kyle Slaughter as quarterback, even though they picked last amongst the 8 teams amongst the available
#1 in the USFL.
Yeah, #1 in passing yards, even though he hasn't been that impressive. I think it might be more the offensive line in general has been inconsistent, but they've got playmakers at receiver, and they've been really good on defense. So that makes them, because they bear the New Orleans name, even though it's sort of weird, empty stadium, middle of Alabama,
Crazy.
It's something that if they have a really good season, that I think they will draw fans at a place like Yulman next year where you'd think they would play. It's going to succeed for another year because Fox owns it.
Yes.
Fox made it a made-for-TV event, and it's doing well enough in the ratings already that they're going to be able to sell to advertisers to take the next step. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they draw next year. Whether they win the USFL this year or not, it's going to be a weird decision for fans.
Well, I'm going to say right now, look, people are spoiled by being an air-conditioned dome. Playing spring football in the heat at Yeoman is going to be a challenge. But if they're winning, there's going to be a segment of the population, of the sports population, that's going to go and see them play.
There's no doubt about it, because people love football here.
That's exactly
it's
right.
a winning New Orleans team that's getting national TV games. It takes care of itself.
I agree. All right, let's switch to baseball, because I want to try to see if we can squeeze in a little bit of spring football. Oh man, the Southland. I'm going to go there. Normally I'm going to, but I mean the Southland is so tight right now. 12-9, McNeese and SLU, and then it's UNO, Nichols, Northwestern, Houston Baptist, all at 11-10. A&M, Corpus Christi 9-12, Incarnate Word 7-14. Talk about it's a log jam with what this is the last weekend.
Last weekend, 3 games. They'll be done.
And then a new format for the tournament as well, right?
And that's what makes the top 2 so valuable. Even if you don't wind up being the #1 seed, there's almost certainly going to be a tie for the title.
Right.
How big is that tie going to be? But the format I think the Southland went to is what all smaller leagues should do that tend to be one-bid leagues. There'll be 4 NCAA first-round regional-style sites. Top 2 seeds will host. Double elimination. Winner of those 2 regionals the next week go on and play a best 2 out of 3 to determine the champion. You don't have this weird setup where you throw 8 teams together like they have in the past. The losers bracket turns out to be a mess where the final score is 18-17. People don't have pitching. That won't be as much of a factor now. And that league I don't know. Throw them into a hat. Even those teams at the bottom that have losing conference records. I called those UNO games home series recently. If you told me those teams wound up winning the automatic bid and got hot for 2 weekends, the 2 worst teams in the league on paper wouldn't shock me in the least. Your guess is as good as mine. So if you want to see up in the air competitive baseball where all the games matter, the Southland from this weekend on into the postseason for 2 weeks is going to be a blast to watch for a baseball fan.
It's good. I love the Southland because of that. It's crazy. It really is. And a really good baseball league right now, as it normally is as well. Let's talk about LSU. 33-15, 14-10. Your thoughts? They win the Alabama series. They got 2 series left. They're 16th now in the RPI. It looks like they're going to host a sub-regional if things go right. What are your thoughts?
Well, the things going right part is what you need to determine at this point. Obviously, nothing's set in stone. 14-10 in the league is the key number. If they wind up with at least 17, you play 30 conference games, they've got the 6 left. If you win at least 17, pretty good chance LSU hosts. They can get to 18. Then pretty good chance they stay out of the way of the buzzsaws at the top of college baseball right now. Tennessee, which has been an absolute monster this year. Oregon State, you don't want to be matched up with them. You can potentially get all the way to a top 8 seed if you do even better than that. But this weekend is the key because you get an Ole Miss team that's playing a little better lately and lost a lot of close games. But still, you've got to, at home, your final home league series, win at least 2 out of 3. Because the final series is at Vanderbilt. They're not quite the Vandy they've been in recent years, but they're still a tournament team. They're still really good. They're still tough to beat on that turf at home. So LSU needs to get to 3-3 at least in these final games. If they do, I think they're hosting.
Yeah, and that which is a key for them going forward. The pitching is an issue.
It's not good, and what Jay Johnson in his first year has done to piece it together. It's been a great job. They're much more reliever heavy. They can get 2 or 3 good innings out of guys, much more than outside of what Mikhail Hilliard's been a godsend coming back, you know, getting 5 or 6. So they're still piecing it together. We don't know as of right now, unless they've released it, who they're starting in their Sunday game or Saturday game this weekend yet, much less Sunday. But they can hit. And if it's a close game late, they've got good 1 or 2 inning guys that have gotten them over the hump more often than not the last 6 weeks. I don't know how far they can go in the tournament because teams that don't have enough pitching tend to get exposed.
Injury to Jacob Berry.
It hurts, but it sounds like they're going to be careful with it because they do have enough depth in their lineup, and they'll be able to get him back full strength. You would think by the NCAA tournament. It's a fracture of the middle finger, hairline. It's not that big of a deal, and it really only affects him because you can DH him, which actually probably makes LSU better defensively. Because the only reason he came here, the promise of being able to play a position. I assume that he can hit. I believe he can hit still right-handed. Yes. So again, that limits you because it's more righties than lefties you're going to face as far as pitching goes. But I think if they have to be super careful with him, they will, and he'll be 100% by the postseason.
Tulane 29-19 and 10-8. That looked like they were going to have a chance at getting into the tournament. It now looks like they've got to win the AAC.
Right, they blew it again. Look, they beat ECU 2 out of 3 at home, and you're right there. You can win the regular season. You can move your RPI up into the at-large range, and then they lose consecutive series, Central Florida, and then Cincinnati. And I hate to say, but you blew it because you know what you've got to do to be in that spot so you don't have to win the tournament. There's a lot of grumpy Tulane fans about Travis Jewett, and they're not going to want to hear the excuses because injuries have hit them again. There may be even an eligibility concern, some of the rumor mill is saying, to a starter. So that's not going to work in year 6. And I don't care how much the AD that hire him, Travis Dannon, may like him and want it to work out. If they wind up fizzling out the rest of the way, I know, trying to help the recruiting side of things. Tulane has the money in this case to deal with it. Fans care most about baseball.
That's right.
Period. And you've got to win, and they're sitting in 4th place in the conference right now when they should be a team that's battling for the top.
I'm with you.
I think a change is coming soon.
Congratulations to Delgado, once again, Region 23 champs. They it's the 12th consecutive title. The 15th in the last 16 seasons. 35-14. Joe Sherman's got a juggernaut over there by City Park.
As always, and he develops players for the next level. And that's why he keeps getting solid players. But shout out to Nunez. They beat him by one run in the championship game. Already beat him one time in that tournament. This is a program that hasn't existed for 3 years.
That's a great point. I'm glad you said that.
So give them a big shout out. They're the Pelicans too, by the way. So the rise of the Pelicans in New Orleans or in this area is real. All
right, let's talk. We got about 2 minutes that we can go through this. LSU spring. Everybody's talking about the quarterback position. Your thoughts?
Boy, is it wide open.
It is.
Who would have thought that Garrett Nussmeier would be such a true contender for the job? And I think it's a great thing. You want as many viable options at the most important position as possible. But at the same time, if he really starts winning out, you're going to potentially face the top 2 guys you thought as far as the most experienced guys, maybe both deciding to leave, especially because of the fact that Brennan could leave in August as a grad transfer. So then your depth disappears. I don't think that's going to play into the decision. He's going to pick the best guy. And in the end, I'm going to guess that the safe pick, it won't be much of a separation not to pick Miles Brennan, at least to start things out. And there's a vision for Daniels and his mobility to be a package guy. Not the physical runner like a Taysom Hill with the Saints package guy, but because of his movement ability, throwing on the run, speed, running the read option, he'll play a little bit too.
I feel like a broken record here with Tulane. But really, the big story is the transfers that have high school that have been here from New Orleans high schools that came back to play at Tulane, which really have really augmented that lineup. It is a better lineup now with those guys that can come in.
There's no doubt about it. You have more talent to try to be able to match up in a conference that's also bringing in higher level transfers that are coming down who can really play. So it makes it much more of a toss-up from one year to the other. The key is, and I say it every year, this is a league where you got to score points. Every once in a while, a team emerges, and we know what Cincinnati did, but can't expect that to continue. And in the end, you got to be the team. If you're the top scoring team in the league, you're probably contending for the title. You got to keep up with the UCFs, Houstons, SMUs of the world. And Tulane needs to have the development at quarterback with Michael Pratt and protect him as a passer in order to take advantage of pretty good skill talent. Tajay Spears, of course, still keeping him. I thought he might have been a transfer guy, but he's happy there. That's a big keeper. They need to score points. They need to win a couple of shootouts to be the difference between struggling to be bowl eligible and really taking a step forward. And after a miserable season, they really do need to at least be a bowl team. This needs to be a
bounce back season.
No doubt.
Okay, and look, I don't think Willie Fritz is going anywhere, but at the same time, it's got to be a bounce back season this past season.
Right, and I don't believe there's going to be pressure beyond that, but it does start to affect your recruiting and the gains that they've made across the Gulf South with Fritz and his
And I do like what they're doing in the transfer portal. Again, giving former Louisiana high school, especially New Orleans area, a chance to come back home.
Right. That augments what you already have. But the guys like Spears and Pratt, those are guys you sign out of high school and you develop and you make them into something, and they have to be successful enough to wind up being first and second day draft pick consideration type guys. They have the talent. Will they play that way?
Jude, tell everybody about your radio show. Tell us about CrescentCitySports.com. Let them know about all about it.
Tuesday nights on 106.1 FM at 6 o'clock following Eric Asher's Inside New Orleans, as well as what we do at CrescentCitySports.com all year round. Check out the site, follow it. State high school baseball semifinals today. Whenever you're watching this show on a Thursday, although you'll see it in multiple days, live on CrescentCitySports.com, free video, and on Nash Icon 106.1 FM. So please check that out.
Always great to have you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, so many ways to catch our program. There is a QR code that's up on your screen. You can hit it and click with your phone, and then, of course, it'll take you to WLAE-TV YouTube page, also to my website as well. But a lot of ways they'll catch our program. That's up on the screen right now. Also, you catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, Anchor is our home base for our podcast. There are digital platforms you can catch us as well. So a lot of ways to be able to catch the program. Also, I want to thank our underwriters for making our show possible, as well as the WLE production staff, which do a great job of producing this program each and every week. They include, again, Alex Chacon, Logan Graffia, and my director, William Hill. Also want to thank Ron Yeager and Jim Dotson, part of, again, the WLAE group here as well. Been a great week. Looking forward to now, again, with the draft lottery next week, mini camp this week. A lot going on with the home teams. We'll talk about it all over again next week. Mike Detillier will be our guest next week on the program. I'm Eric Asher for Jude Young. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for joining us.